All right, we're now recording. Thank you, Laura. Okay, Mr. King, Mr. Chairman, would you please give us a call to order, and then we will move to our statement of necessity.
Very well. Thank you, Michael. This is the Engineering Committee of the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners on January the 20th, 2021 at 1 o'clock Central Time. I'll call the committee meeting to order.
Thank you, sir. Maria, would you please give us a statement of necessity?
Yes, thanks, Michael. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. This is a specially scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Engineering Examiners Engineer Committee, which is taking place by electronic means utilizing the WebEx teleconference application on Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. Notice that this meeting was posted to the board's website on December 4th, 2020. As there is not a physical quorum present, necessity is read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State as required by statute. Pursuant to TCA 844-108B2, if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, then in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. That determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based. Further, TCA 844-108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting require timely action by the body. That physical presence by a quorum of members is not practical within a period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. As stated, this is a specially scheduled meeting for the Tennessee Board of Architectural and Engineer Committee. The purpose of this meeting with members attending by teleconference to discuss information surrounding the engineer technology degrees. The WebEx teleconference application is being utilized in order to provide the most safe manner of meeting due to COVID-19. All voting will be conducted by roll call. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Maria. And we're picking up some feedback. So just a reminder, if you're not actively speaking in this meeting, please put yourself on mute. And we do go no cameras for these meetings. So just another housekeeping item there. Agenda changes is next on the agenda, and I would like to offer the first one. On the agenda, it says 1 a.m. I think I would like to change that to p.m. and recognize my own typo there. Are there any other agenda changes proposed? Okay, then hearing none, we can move right into our discussion of engineering technology, a continuation of our engineering technology degrees discussion and path to licensure. I would like to first call attention to some of our visitors who were invited to join the conversation today. We have representatives from the University of Memphis and University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. Dean Richard Swigert is with us from Memphis. And do we have a representative from Chattanooga? I'm not seeing Dean Pack's name, so I just want to make sure we've got the correct somebody here. Okay, well, Dean Swigert, would you mind go ahead and introduce yourself real quick and tell us a little bit about your programs and what the University of Memphis offers? And then I would like to preface your remarks by saying, you know, this is a conversation about engineering technology degrees and engineering degrees, the differences between, and after you're finished, I would like for the committee members to then begin with an open discussion and Q&A forum with you. So please, sir, go right ahead.
Thank you. I'll give you a little bit of my own background before I talk about our programs here at the University of Memphis. I'm in my 8th year here at the University of Memphis as dean. I came here after a 25-year career at the University of Kentucky, where I was an engineering professor and administrator, both a department chair and an associate dean. So most of my career has been at an institution that does not have an engineering technology program. And I would say probably like most engineers, I did not have, I guess, the highest regard for engineering technology. However, in my time here at Memphis, I've grown to appreciate our engineering technology program. We have 6 BS degree programs in the college. We have a BS degree in biomedical engineering, civil engineering, computer engineering, electrical engineering, and mechanical engineering, and a BS program in engineering technology. And I have to admit, I've not really studied the issue of licensure for engineering technology graduates. I'm aware that a number of other states permit engineering technology graduates to sit for the FE exam and obtain licensure. I am licensed in both Pennsylvania and Kentucky. The test that I passed was mining engineering. My PhD is in mining engineering. I have a BS in civil engineering, but I decided I was an engineer that really liked geology, and that kind of led me down the path of mining engineering. So I think there's some issues that come to mind initially, one of which is the FE exam itself. Back when I took the FE exam many years ago, it was a general FE exam and we did not have specializations. I think engineering technology graduates would maybe be at somewhat of a disadvantage in the FE exam unless there was an FE exam specifically designed for them, and I don't know that I think that's a good idea. My own discipline of mining engineering has the same disadvantage because smaller disciplines don't have specific FE exams. Civil, electrical, mechanical, the big ones do, but there's a lot of smaller ones that don't, and consequently have to take the general FE exam, which puts them at a little bit of disadvantage. The other disadvantage I see is really what I like about our engineering technology program, and that is that it is extremely practical and not as theoretical as the other engineering degrees. So they don't get as much of the kind of classical problem solving. When I say problem solving, I don't mean actually figuring out how to make things work, but I mean solving problems on paper like we do in the other disciplines. They do more of their work with their hands and in the lab. So I would see that there may be a bit of a disadvantage in passing the FE exam. However, I also have the opinion that if other states are doing it, we're putting our graduates at a disadvantage. And as I said, not having looked at this carefully in other states, I don't know what the success rate has been in other states, and I don't know if there have been problems that have arisen from licensing graduates with engineering technology degree. And again, I've not looked at any of the things that you're considering here in Tennessee. I do know that there are differences in engineering technology programs. I don't know if they still exist, but certainly, back when I was in college, there were 2-year engineering technology associate degrees. And I wouldn't put them anywhere on the same level as a BS in engineering technology. So, I don't know what's being considered, but I personally I don't think that someone with a 2-year associate degree in technology would have the background needed to be, licensed engineer. And that's probably about as much as I can really tell you. Like I said, I know what our engineering technology students do, and I know that they are well equipped when they come out for careers. They are very employable. They do go into various endeavors. Just anecdotally, some of our top successful graduates have come from our engineering technology program. The guy who's currently the president of the Memphis Zoo and was previously CEO of SeaWorld in Orlando is one of our graduates, and he has his BS in engineering technology. The guy who's now retired, but who was VP for FedEx over all their facilities, was also one of our engineering technology graduates. So it doesn't seem to limit their career capability, having graduated with an engineering technology degree. I'll be happy to answer questions and discuss it more, but like I said, it's not something that I have given a lot of thought to, and probably if you had asked me 8 years ago before I came to Memphis if I thought it was a good idea, I probably would have said absolutely not.
Thank you, sir. I would like just 1 second, if you would. I would like to make sure that we are mindful of Dean Swiggert's time. And although we are scheduled until 3 p.m., Dean Swigert, when your time is run out, please just let us know, and then we'll have you take your exit. But
well, thank you. I have a meeting at 3, so as long as we don't go beyond 3, I'm okay.
All right, Alton, you were saying?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I apologize. Dean, this is Alton Heathcote. One of the things that you noted early on when you were talking about some of the differences between an engineering technology degree and an engineering degree and how it may have affected their ability to set for the FE or their preparation for the FE, or I'm assuming beyond that PE. You had stated that you felt like the engineering technology grads would be at a disadvantage taking the FE even if they just took the general exam. Is that why do you think that is? Is it because the curriculum is different and that the ET curriculum maybe would not prepare them at the same level as somebody with an engineering degree curriculum?
Well, like I said, I took that FE exam back when it was the EIT many, many years ago. But I think the way things have evolved now with the civil engineering FE and mechanical engineering FE, I think it's become almost like, I hate to say it this way, but almost like the mini PE. You're going to see a lot of questions that are very specific to the discipline. And engineering technology graduates are probably not as discipline specific. We do have what we call fields of study. So we may have students specializing in software or in electronics or in manufacturing, but they're not going to have that discipline specific focus like the civil engineers, the mechanical engineers, the electrical engineers, the chemical engineers. They're not going to have that. So I think they would probably have a bit of a difficult time with the FE. However, I don't in any way think that should prevent them from having the opportunity to try. And I think anyone, if they are willing to put in the effort, which may mean reviewing some materials ahead of time, should have the opportunity to take the exam, assuming they have the right qualifications. But I do think the pass rate would be lower, frankly.
One other thing I wanted to ask you, Dean, and thank you for that answer, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today and help us sort of understand this better. One other question was, you had mentioned that there's a 2-year engineering technology program and a 4-year engineering. I think you said there's also maybe a 4-year engineering technology program. Did I misunderstand that? And which one does Memphis offer?
Yeah, we have a 4-year Bachelor of Science in Engineering Technology. And most of the technology programs that I'm familiar with are 4-year programs. I know in the past there were 2-year technology programs that were associate degrees, not bachelor's degrees, associate degrees in engineering technology. It's not something I've investigated lately, but I would assume that there are still some 2-year programs around. Another thing that you would certainly want to look at is whether or not, as you do for engineering programs, whether or not they're accredited by ABET. And our 4-year BS in Engineering Technology program is ABET accredited. And there are a number of 4-year BS in Engineering Technology programs that are accredited by ABET. I would apply the same standard to engineering technology that I would to just BS in engineering. As far as I know, you won't allow someone from an unaccredited BS engineering program to sit for the exam. I don't know of any of them that are out there because everybody knows that you do need to graduate from accredited program, but that is kind of the quality control on the program, having ABET accreditation. So there has been another accrediting body, and I don't even know what its acronym is, but there is another accrediting body that accredits some engineering technology programs, and I do believe they accredit 2-year programs. And again, I apologize because I'm talking really from memory and not having looked at this information at all lately. But there is another accrediting body, and I believe they accredit 2-year programs.
Thank you, Dr. Swigert. I appreciate your patience and your answers. Thank you.
This is Ricky. I've got a question for Dr. Swigert.
Yep.
Okay. Hey, Dr. Swigert, how are you? Ricky.
Good. How are you doing?
Good. We get some applications for comedy from engineers, PEs from other states who have a technology degree, an engineering technology degree, and they have gone on to get a master's in an engineering program. And I wondered if you know, well, I know at the University of Memphis, can you be accepted into the master's program with an engineering technology degree? And is that more common? Is that a common thing, do you know, among schools with a master's program that they would accept somebody with an engineering technology degree?
From my experience, I don't think it's all that common, but it's not unheard of. My first master's student, when I was a new professor at University of Kentucky, was a young woman that came with an engineering technology degree. And we admitted her into the Master of Science program in mining engineering. But because she came in with a BS in engineering technology from an accredited program, we required her to take some, I don't know what word we used, but basically make up some deficiencies in her background before we granted her a master's degree in mining engineering. Now, that's strictly a program by program decision. Keep in mind, most master's degrees are not accredited. we only accredit our degrees at the bachelor's level because the requirement for licensure is that you have a degree from an accredited institution. You don't have to have a bachelor's and a master's. So once you have an accredited bachelor's degree, you're eligible for licensure.
Are you saying most master's programs are not accredited? Is that what you?
Most are not.
Okay.
Most are not. Now there are a few, and you know the one that sticks out because I've spent all those years in Kentucky is Louisville, and Louisville, for political reasons, had trouble with the state from getting accredited bachelors, so that the way that they got around that was to get their master's programs accredited. But and I see Dan's just joined us from UT Chattanooga. For programs that that have an accredited bachelor's degree, there's not much advantage in getting your master's degrees accredited. So relatively few are. ABET will accredit master's programs, but most of them are not. And in that case, you don't have to worry about ABET criteria. All you have to do is worry about is satisfying your university's own requirements for a master's degree.
Okay. You answered one of my questions when you said in your case that there was a requirement to have some extra courses added for a technology graduate to kind of fill in engineering like courses when you're in a master's degree. I wondered that, and I also wondered if there would be some limitation on the kind of master's program an engineering technology student might be accepted to if they didn't take any extra courses. Is that even? Have you ever heard of that? Is there some limitation on what they can do?
Well, I doubt that you're going to see in anybody's admission requirements that's spelled out in that kind of detail.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, most students that enter a master's degree are expected to have, math up through differential equations, and most engineering technology programs, they'll have calculus, but they won't go beyond first or second year calculus. So, in the example that I gave you, I think we required that student to pass differential equations before we allowed her to, graduate with a master's degree in engineering. But that's specifically a program vision. Yeah.
Okay. And what about does the technology degree? So you answered another question I had about math, how far they go in math. Is it kind of, do they, in chemistry and the physics that we had to take, two courses of chemistry and 2 of physics, is that, what does technology program at Memphis do, or what do most technology do there?
It's not as demanding as the engineering program. They do take a physics course. I don't think chemistry is required. In fact, it's not required for every engineering program. I don't think computer engineering or electrical engineering require chemistry either, but the others do.
Okay.
But no, they don't take as much physics as the engineering students do.
Okay. That helps me. Thank you.
That's why I was saying I think they would be at somewhat of a disadvantage with the FE, but that doesn't mean they couldn't acquire that knowledge and pass the FE. But I think they'd have to work harder at it than someone who's completed a BS in engineering. I will.
Thank you.
I'll just say that during the time that I was a department chair for a long time at University of Kentucky, there were a number of people that asked me to write to the Kentucky State Board and basically review their people that came from a non-accredited institution, many times students from international universities. And, I would review their transcripts and make a recommendation to the state board whether or not I thought they had equivalent of a U.S. accredited degree. So, I mean, those kinds of things have been going on for a while.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, I would like to, at this point, offer Dean Pack the same opportunities that we gave to Dean Swigert to introduce himself, give a little background on himself and his programs at UTC. Dean Pack? I believe you're on mute, sir.
My apologies for being late for the meeting. So thank you for an opportunity to introduce myself. I serve as the Dean of the College of Engineering and Computer Science here at UTC. We are 1,600 plus student population with 1,400 in undergraduate, 200 in graduate programs, where students are pursuing 13 different degrees, 8 in undergraduate, including engineering management degree, and 4 master's and 1 PhD degree program. I will be very happy to participate in discussion and contribute, so I'll make that short. Was there something?
Yeah, no, sir, you're doing just fine. Thank you. This is kind of an open forum between the members of the State Engineers Committee and you all to explore the differences between engineering technology degrees and engineering degrees. And Mr. Steve King is the chairman here, and the committee members have just been kind of asking questions of you and Dean Swigert. So I'll turn it back over to the committee.
Sure, thank you.
Dean Pack, this is Alton Heathcote, a member of the engineering committee. And one of the things Dean Swigert was just gracious enough to share with us is what he felt like maybe the differences between an engineering degree and an engineering technology 4-year degree, and potentially some of the encumbrances or shortcomings that someone with a 4-year engineering technology degree may have in being able to sit for and pass both the FE and the PE. Can you help sort of outline what you think maybe the differences are between the two programs at University of Tennessee, Chattanooga?
Sure, I'll be happy to. So typically, engineering technology degree for 4-year degree is for students who are in between somebody who is in engineering bachelor's degree versus people who are graduating with AS degree or AAS degree of 2-year program. So given that context, the people who are pursuing engineering technology degree, the requirements are less than the engineering, full-fledged engineering degree programs. And the expectations of the type of jobs and careers that they will pursue will be also different, where engineering degree students, when they graduate, I use an analogy of builders versus operators. So the ones who are graduating with engineering degrees are the ones who will design and build, and the ones who are graduating with technology degree would be the ones who will operate. Not that they are less smart than ones who are doing bachelor's in engineering, but the focus of the training and education would be different in that context. In terms of their ability to pass FE and PE examinations, I think they are certainly capable of doing it as well as the engineers do. I think I've caught the tail end of Rick saying that the prerequisites and the education in science and math is less for technology degree, and that's certainly true here at UTC. So the students who are going into the classes that are follow on these science and math classes, they're expected to have less background or less rigor in mathematics and physics and other science courses. So, but I don't think that they are less capable of passing FE or PE examinations.
Dean Pack, this is Ricky Bursai, engineer committee member. Thanks for talking to us today. That's very helpful. I wondered if you had awareness, maybe across the nation, are there engineering technology, 4-year engineering technology degrees that vary? I think Dean Swigert told us that he knows they vary. But among the 4-year technology degrees, are there some that are very close to engineering degrees versus others that are more what you describe? And particularly, I think I've had this idea that maybe up in the Northeast, they traditionally engineering technology degrees might be somewhat closer to an engineering degree. But I just wondered if do you have any awareness of the spectrum of engineering technology degrees and how much difference there is there?
So, sure. So traditionally, the technology degrees, as was mentioned, were focused on people who would go out and be able to operate systems. But I think that recently, more of the new disciplines of the technology have come into play. For example, mechatronics, which is a combination of mechanical engineering and electrical engineering. So mechatronics technology is an area that came up in the technology 4-year degree where because it's a new discipline, and although there's a mechatronics engineering degree, mechatronics technology degree graduates were able to go into manufacturing industry and other fields with their 4-year degree very easily. So in that context, the level of training that they receive, it's because it's a new area, were very novel and up to date that engineering degree may not necessarily offer. So there's certain advantage of getting a technology degree for the new emerging areas that are fast changing than, let's say, traditional engineering degrees where people have been pursuing those degrees for a long time, which means the foundational knowledge and the knowledge that have accumulated over the years tend to stay the same, whereas the new technology degrees in the emerging field, they have advantage to adapt and be able to produce the workforce that is needed in those fields rather easily.
Thank you, Dean. helpful.
This is Steve King, also on the engineering committee. I'm just curious from either dean's perspective, is there any, obviously the board is here to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the public through licensure of engineers. Would you view that there's any difference in the ability of the two graduates to move into that realm to be licensed and their ability to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public?
Yeah, I'll be happy to comment on that. As you all know, the Code of Ethics requires that we only practice in areas of our expertise. So, like I said, I got a PE, which, allows me to practice in any area where I'm competent, but I passed the test in mining engineering. You wouldn't want me out there certifying electrical work. And I think the same could be said for someone that would go the engineering technology route. There are some areas where they would be every bit as competent as, say, an electrical engineer or mechanical engineer in those areas that that Dan was talking about. On the other hand, someone that graduated with an engineering technology degree and focused on, say, mechatronics, you wouldn't want them certifying structural, and they would not be allowed to do that according to the Code of Ethics. But it's up to the individual how they adhere to that. But I think in the area of their expertise, I don't think that there would be any risk to public health and safety, as long as they are working within the area where they've been trained.
I would tend to agree what Rick said. The four-year education is, if it's a foundation for their knowledge, it is the experience that they have in a particular field that will help them to become competent and capable engineers and technologists. So in that context, I don't think that there will be difference between somebody who has gotten engineering degree versus technology degree, who would be mindful of the safety of the public in what they do, and as they pass the exam of the ENFE, and having had that experience, I don't think there will be a difference between the two degree programs or graduates of two degree programs.
I think the safeguards there's really three safeguards, is the way I see it. First one is the accredited degree. That applies to the bachelor's degree in engineering. I think it would also have to apply to the Bachelor of Science in Engineering Technology. It has to be ABET accredited. And you have to, the fundamentals of engineering exam is certainly a safeguard, and then the professional practice exam. So I think if someone with that background is able to check all three of those boxes, I think they should be adequately prepared.
I assume that same.
Michael, you're cutting in and out, and I heard him.
Yeah, Michael, I agree with Casey.
Hey, Michael,
I heard
we
both
can hear
deans
you
very
fine.
clearly.
Go ahead, Alton.
Well, that's what I was going to reiterate what you said, Casey, that we heard both deans very clearly, but Michael, yours was breaking up really severely.
While we're kind of waiting, this is Robert. Just a quick question to both deans. How many courses in other disciplines do the engineering technology? So if you get a civil engineering technology degree, would you also have courses in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, technology, geotechnical, other fields?
So for UTC, currently the only technology degree that we offer, I should say two, is mechatronics technology and then an engineering management technology degree. Their curricula, when you look at it, most of the courses that they take are different than the courses that are being offered from engineering discipline and their programs. So there isn't much of an overlap, with a few exceptions like statistics, some math courses, and then engineering statistics type of courses, and engineering economics. So sure, Rick, I don't know what kind of programs that you offer in the technology programs, but we don't have much overlap between the courses that are being taken by students from two different programs.
Back years ago, before my time at the University of Memphis, they did have specific degrees in civil engineering technology, mechanical engineering technology, electrical engineering technology, and then they went through some contraction, and we now offer one BS degree in engineering technology. And within that, we have what we call fields of study, which are basically concentrations. And those concentrations tend to be around electronics or software, PLC, that kind of stuff. Manufacturing. We do not have any technology courses dealing with civil engineering issues. They're basically electrical, mechanical type of courses. So, like unlike take civil, which I'm most familiar with because I got a degree in civil. You take your civil courses, you take your basic math and science, you take your gen ed, and then you're going to have a circuits course, and you're going to have some things like that thrown in. Our BS in engineering technology, of course, has the basic gen ed courses. It has basic math and science, but not as much of it as the BS engineering degree. And then it has a lot of specialized courses in their discipline that prepare them for a career in, maybe in electronics, or maybe in as a maintenance supervisor in a plant or something like that. So they get a lot more hands-on practical stuff, a lot more, hydraulics and electronics than the engineers do. So in many cases, they're, you hear the stories of the engineer who graduates and he doesn't know, which end of a wrench to pick up, whereas, the technology graduate is at home in that kind of environment. But at the cost of not having as much basic math and science.
Yeah, maybe an example would also help. If we are looking at electrical engineer, one of the concentration or focus area could be designing and constructing a computer or high power computing machines. And whereas the electrical technologist would be the one who would actually connect some parts, the boards, to make that computer operate. Because of that type of focus or the workforce that is being generated from two different disciplines, the coursework that they will take would be different even if it is the same type of course. So if they are in the same example of the electrical engineering, if they're taking a digital logic course, the students who are going through a bachelor's of science program in engineering would be taught how to actually design and make these systems from scratch, whereas technology students would be taking the same type of course, but learning how to operate logic and being able to test digital logic so that they can be able to debug problems. So that's why intentionally the curricula between the technologist program versus engineering program would be different in nature.
This is Robert Campbell again, and I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the East Tennessee board member with the AE board, so apologize for that on the front end. And I appreciate both of what you said, but this is whoever said it. Our charge is to protect the health, safety, and welfare, and this is just from my experience. I'm not trying to say this is universal, or I'm not trying to force this on anybody. But when I took as an engineer, when I took certain classes, and some were obviously elective, but some were, I think, if I'm not mistaken, required. You had to take some of those in different areas. Then I kind of figured out what I didn't know. So, for instance, circuits is one of those. It's a good class. When I'm in the real world now, I remember how much I struggled with circuits, how much I struggled with E fields and B fields when it was in physics. And so I stay away from electrical stuff. I just wonder, and this again, experience in the arena may take care of this, extra experience in the arena, but that is kind of one of my concerns is we don't get the technology, as you said, and as I appreciate, more hands-on, but you may kind of start thinking, well, I can fix this problem. Let me go fix that other problem. Because I can use this wrench on a conveyor belt, but now I can also use this wrench on a bridge, and you may not be able to. So I'm trying to wrap my head around that, and make sure that we don't have that temptation to go, oh, I've got my license now, I can kind of go do other things. That's just, again, personal experience. It may not, you may survey 100 people and 99 doesn't tell you I'm wrong, but that's my 2 cents worth on that. But I appreciate what y'all just said. That's good information.
It seems to me the way how one might overestimate their knowledge and their skills certainly will depend on their experiences and their education. But I think it's more of the maturity of that person rather than the type of education that they might have received. So I think the important thing is that competency of that person when they conduct any business whatsoever. And if there are ways to safeguard that type of overestimating the person's capability, even after you get a PE, you all know that they have to have a continuous development and training yearly. So perhaps a way to prevent that is to, as a part of the training, includes some type of ethics and just drilling down to individuals about the importance of making sure that what they practice is safe for the public.
And I agree, and that may be again where extra experience comes in before they can take a test or something. And I think that's what we're trying to do is put those guardrails up. And it's not, I'm not picking on engineering technology graduates, because we certainly have engineers that kind of get ahead of their skis sometimes too. So you know, maybe this is more of a universal issue.
Could I ask a question? Have you been in contact with your colleagues in other states that have already gone through this? And do you have any anything that they can share with you as far as the problems that they may have encountered, or because I would think that there's been a number of states that have done it, and they probably wrestled with what you're doing now, and anything that you can learn from them would probably be helpful.
Dean Swigert, this is Ricky Bursai, and we probably haven't done enough of that, but we do have a lot of good documentation to look at of what other states, how they stand right now on it, and maybe what some of those are in the process of changing. But so we at least have this awareness that there's 20 states that accept engineering technology degrees outright, and 20 states have a pathway for engineering technology degrees that might require either additional coursework or additional experience or both. And then 9 states are like Tennessee. They don't, their laws just don't allow for engineering a pathway at all. And so at least we have that, but we probably haven't done enough of what you're talking about and talking directly one-on-one with the different states. But if the other committee members can think of things that I'm not remembering, pipe up.
Ricky, this is Alton. I agree with you. We've got a lot of data and information about what other states require, whether it's nothing in addition to an ETAC accredited degree, or 2 to 4 years experience, or a master's and 2 additional years of experience. We don't have that. We have that information, but what we don't have, and I think Dean Swigert may have hit on something, is and again, I think a lot of this is relatively recent. I think most of this has occurred in the last, Michael, you may know this, or Casey, you may know this, 5-6 years. This ETAC is an alternate pathway to licensure. So I don't know how much data or information there is about how many ETAC graduates have taken and passed either the FE and or the PE. And the other thing that we don't know is from the other licensing boards, what incidents of complaints have they seen in cases where someone did not hold a degree from an accredited engineering school, an EAC, EAC accredited university versus an ETAC accredited university. We don't have that data, or at least to my knowledge, we don't. And Michael and Casey, you may correct me.
This is Casey Anderson. I don't have anything to add to that, Alton. I don't know specifics.
Yeah, nor I, pardon my sluggishness there. I lost, we had an issue in the building and I lost connectivity, so I had to join by phone and I forgot that my audio was on the phone now. So I like Casey, I don't have specifics on that.
This is Alton again. I'm assuming that somebody like ABET or NCAAS may have access to information like that. They, to me, would be the most likely resources for that, although you may know of other more appropriate resources where we might be able to get that sort of information.
I did check out, and this is Michael again. I did check with the NCAAS on that after our last meeting, and they did not have a running record of that information. So I have reached out to some of my counterparts in other states, mostly the ones surrounding Tennessee directly, to get their thoughts and experiences on these issues, but I don't have anything concrete in terms of data to pass around.
I think one of the things to also consider is that higher education, as well as other places where they are looking for qualifications of people, and more are looking at the competency, not necessarily the institutions or programs that they went through. So I think this is probably part of that movement to say, how do we make sure that people who have the capabilities and are capable of doing things would be able to be qualified to be professional engineers. So given the fact that people with competencies will be able to do the work, then it seems to me, and I'm a member of NCEES, where I write questions for computer engineers in that group. We just have to make sure that that has been strengthened, so that the competencies will be tested correctly and in the right format, so that the people who do get the PE will be able to really pass that safety check that we talked about earlier, that they are qualified and they meet the requirements to become PE, not necessarily that they have to have a certain degree or the number of years of experience. I'm not advocating that, but I'm saying that's the reason why there's a movement of making these different qualifications more competency-based rather than degree-based.
This is Rick Swigert again. Regarding ABET, I doubt that they would have that kind of information that we discussed. I'm a past member of the ABET Engineering Accreditation Commission, and I'm currently a member of the ABET Board of Delegates. And I'm not aware of them gathering any information that would be helpful. I think, what some of you, suggested of maybe actually talking to people in other state boards who've gone through this would probably be the best bet to find out what the problems were, how they circumvented the problems and how it's working, when they've already gone this route. So for what it's worth.
This is Ricky Bursai. That's helpful. I will say, Dean Pack, regarding the competency, I guess our best effort at that, I have to speak for one of our past board members, Philip Lim. I have to say the words three-legged stool. That's required. We have to do that once per meeting. But that's the requirement of education, exam, and experience. And so you can't just become a PE with education, and you can't just become a PE with passing the exams, and you can't become a PE with just the experience. You have to have all three, and that's, I think, been our formula and outlook for protecting health, safety, welfare, and getting the right candidates. So in this case, what we're looking at is, a pathway for somebody who doesn't meet right now what is our laws on education. And one of our focuses has been on the masters, and that there are a lot of the other states that have a pathway for engineering technology. A lot of them would allow an engineering technology degree graduate from an accredited program if they have a master's degree in engineering. And so and I asked Dr. Swigert earlier this question, but Dean Pack, I'll ask you, do your engineering technology graduates, are they able to be accepted into an engineering master's program? And I ask this with the focus being, if one of the things we're considering is making a condition a master's degree in an engineering program, it'd be good for us to know if that's a valid path for most engineering technology graduates, or half of them, or some feel for that. So the question to you is, are your engineering technology program graduates accepted into Masters of Engineering programs?
They are accepted to Masters in Engineering program with the condition that they have to take a set of leveling courses. So it is not the same as somebody with a BS degree.
Okay, that's very helpful. That Dr. Swigert had a very similar answer to that. Thank you.
Hey, Michael, this is Alton. I'm not sure. There are some additional names on here that we have not heard from yet, and if they represent universities that have ETAC programs, I'd like to give them the opportunity to speak also, if we can recognize them.
I'd be happy to, if anyone here is representative of another university that offers the same programs. Would you please let us know? I'm not seeing or hearing from anybody that's from another university.
I'll speak up. This is Keith Johnson from East Tennessee State University. We have several ABET accredited engineering technology programs. We have biomedical, we have construction, we have manufacturing, we have even a surveying program and electronics that are ABET accredited. and we historically has been challenged, with our students graduating with within those concentrations, and will go out and get a lot of experience and want to set for the PE. However, as we've been, spending the last hour or so talking about, really, just the whole concept of ET majors not being able to set for the PE. But one of the bigger things is that many of our students will go to other states and get some experiences and set for the PE and pass the PE and get their engineering licensure exam. So that's a big thing, and I think it's really a disservice to our state when students can go across state lines and work. So it puts us in a position where you look at employment in our state, employment in our region, which in my case, East Tennessee, when students can just hop over the state line, literally, 15, 20 miles away into Virginia and work as an engineer. And so I think, some of the challenges that we have is that we're going to lose graduates in the future. And then the other thing too is that if a student can come to East Tennessee State University and get a degree in one of our concentrations and have an option to go to another institution in a different state and get that same degree. And if getting the PE is a valuable asset to them, then we automatically lose that student. They don't come to East Tennessee State University. They have many options that they can choose from, especially where we're located, when they can just jump over state lines. So.
Hey, Kevin, this is Alton Heathcote again, and I think you were on the call earlier when Dean Swaggart and Dean Pack both gave their analogies or analysis of the differences between the programs. I'd like to give you the same opportunity if you can.
Well, again, Keith Johnson, East Tennessee State. What's interesting is that we have an engineering program and we have an engineering technology program at our institution. And when I think about engineering versus engineering technology, our engineering students will take technical physics, whereas our engineering technology students take general physics. The engineering students will take CAP 1 and 2, whereas engineering technology students will take integral calculus for technology. And there's another calculus class that they take, but it's not the equivalent of CAP 1 and 2. So that's a big thing. Now, another thing that distinguishes one program from the other has a lot to do with the laboratory component. Our engineering technology students have a tendency to take more lab intensive courses, but they also understand the theoretical component as well, because it's not just labs, or in my case, just not vocational, if you will. It is theoretical and laboratory. So we do have lectures associated with the courses, and we do have laboratories associated with the courses, whereas with the engineering students, they have a lot of theoretical components and they have a little less laboratory exposure than our engineering technology students will have. And so, and just to put in a numerical value, just to have a comparison, the engineering students have approximately 20% or so theory. I mean, in terms, 20% application, and our engineering technology folks have about 50% application. And so there's another difference in terms of the theory versus the application part. However, once our students are getting out and they're doing the work, it's interesting to see that some of those students are capable of passing, once they get some experience, they are capable of passing the FE and going on to get their PE. So I think, it makes us a little bit more a competitive give us a competitive disadvantage, if you will, when you start comparing similar programs across the different states. I'm also an ABET evaluator, and I'm also not only evaluate, but I'm also an ABET commissioner. So I take a lot of teams out to programs across the country and even out of this country. And we assess engineering technology programs. And I've experienced, just like the program at East Tennessee State University, very dynamic programs that offers a whole lot to our students. And when our students graduate, I think a lot of the challenges that we have is more associated with us in the academy than it is with industry. Because when I talk with our employers don't really distinguish the difference between those who graduate with engineering technology degrees and those who graduate with engineering degrees. I think we're caught up, with the terminology. I think we've kind of created that hierarchy where engineers, those who get those traditional engineering degrees, are at a much higher place, than the engineering technology graduates. And I've been also a part of the ASEE, part of the CIEC. I'm on the boards for ABET, and we've been having these discussions over my whole career, which is in this case over the last 28 to 29 years, and we really haven't gotten anywhere on this. My thing is, if a person can take the PE and pass it, why are we holding them back? I mean, that's one thing. If students or graduates who get the experience, it's one thing if they can't pass it, but if they can pass it, why can't they receive the same privileges that those other traditional engineers are getting? I just don't understand the lack of our ability to see that when there are so many programs, engineering technology programs, that I've experienced over the last 15 to 20 years that I've been evaluating programs, seeing what their graduates are doing. And to be honest with you, if you just one example, if you think about just a few years back when that major bridge on 85, there was like under the bridge, there was a fire that occurred, and it damaged the bridge, and that bridge had to be, heavily repaired. But what's interesting about that, the person who was kind of the lead engineer on that particular project was a graduate of an engineering technology program. And so I just don't understand. The examples are huge in terms of the numbers of those who graduated with engineering technology degrees and the contributions that they're making from an engineering perspective. But yet in this state, Tennessee, we're still at a place where we're not allowing them to set for PE when they can simply jump the border, get a degree from another institution, and be able to go through the processes necessary to get their PE.
Yeah, Keith, thank you. This is Alton again. Thank you for those comments. And I'm curious, how many of your engineering technology degree graduates actually go sit for the FE exam? Do you know that?
I don't have those numbers right offhand. I think one of my faculty members, Bill Hemphill, is on here. He may know, but I could get those numbers and send them to you. But I'm not sure the actual numbers. I just know when the alums communicate with me after they graduate, I have not been keeping a record on that. But that's something that definitely I need to follow up on so I can have an accurate number.
Yeah, I would be curious about not only that, how many took it, but also how many passed it. And
Right.
Then secondary to that, same thing with the PE. If they're actually passing the FE somewhere and then going to take, I'm assuming that's in the state that has decoupling, or it may not be, that they go across state borders and sit for the PE. I'd also be curious about how many set for the PE and then also how many passed it.
Right. Okay.
That would be really helpful information.
I can get that data.
Yeah. Thank you again. Thanks very much for your insight and your comments.
Well, you're more than welcome.
This is Steve King, Alton. Thank you for inviting others to speak. I think that's a good idea. So I'm sure we have some others on the WebEx that also might want to speak. So I'd like to give anyone else that opportunity also. And I guess, Michael, if we don't have any more comments, do we want to proceed with a discussion with the engineering committee, or what would be your suggestion for our next
Yeah, well,
move?
we'd be happy to close the floor at this point for the Q&A, the forum discussion, and move to just discussion amongst the members of the committee regarding what you've heard here today, and or any other items that may need to come up relating to this. If there is, if you all do not require further discussion, we can discuss items for the next meeting and talk about action items.
Hey, Michael, this is Alton. Before we do that, I want to thank all of the educators who participated here today and were so forthcoming with their information. It's been very, very helpful to me, as I'm sure it has to the other members of the engineering committee, and I'm very grateful for them taking time out of their schedules to do this for and with us. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation, and don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions in the future.
Same here from UTC. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for all the work you're doing.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And just as to reiterate what Chairman King just said, if there's anybody else out there who would like to identify themselves at this point, now would be the time to do so. All right. Thank you
I'll
all.
say goodbye.
Okay, we're signing off. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, committee, would you like to pursue a discussion based on what we've heard today? Are we ready to discuss some details of our recommendation, or do you see that there's more data or information that we need to collect?
Hey, Steve, this is Ricky. I was glad to hear a little that information about the master's programs that, in accepting engineering technology grads, that more courses were required. It made me feel pretty good about that option that we've discussed. I think, though, going back and looking at the notes of our last committee meeting where we talked about this, we talked about maybe the master's being conditioned. We talked about additional experience or a combination of both. But that it certainly made me feel a little better about the master's condition there, hearing what they had to say about the extra coursework being required.
Yeah, Steve, this is Alton. I want to echo what Ricky said, but one other thing that both Dean Pack and Dean Swigert commented about was the importance of the engineering technology degree being ABET accredited, a 4-year ABET accredited program. I appreciated them sharing that with us too.
You know, one thing that occurs to me as we listen to the deans, I guess I'm a little bit confused because if both degrees, you know, that they feel like satisfy in some degree the requirements for licensure, are we to the point where there doesn't need to be two separate accreditations? I know that's not the board's decision, but if both the technology degree and engineering degree are to meet the education requirements for licensure, why does there need to be two different accreditations?
Well, I think maybe, Steve, the answer to that is, as I understood it, was that they all acknowledge that the degrees are different, and they do lack coursework in both science and the math, particularly calculus, advanced calculus. And I think that's why they were both required supplemental classes before allowing someone with an ETAC degree to enter the master's program. So I think there is enough of a difference. I mean, granted, and obviously, they feel like there is a separation. Even all of them talked about the type of work and the type of fields that ETAC grads entered into. They were more industrial and manufacturing, and less design, where it was more practical application and maybe not designing machines and equipment, but operating machines and equipment, where an engineer, again, rises to maybe a different level because of their education, and they're going into a different type of job opportunity. So I do think that they, or at least what I heard, I've got 4 pages of notes here, but what I heard is they all acknowledged that there was a difference in the education, and generally there's a difference in the vocation post-education. They all advocated for licensure for ETAC, and I think they all acknowledge that they, I guess Keith Johnson, we never got to that question with him, but I don't know if they do offer a master's program. I didn't write that down, but before any ETAC grad can enter a master's program, they require them to have the supplemental components, the physics and the calculus. So I do think there is a differentiator there, and I think if we were looking at making some allowance for a path to licensure for ETAC, we probably ought to take into consideration some of the things we heard today. One, that an ETAC graduate is not equivalent to an engineering graduate, and that there are supplemental classes involved. And you see from the data and information that we got, there are a number of a number of states that require a master's degree from an EAC, ABET accredited university. So I'd be curious about what, I'm assuming that their requirements for entrance for an ETAC into the master's program would be similar. So if we're thinking about criteria to allow that as an alternate path to licensure, I think that ought to be one of the things, is that entrance into the master's program, which would require them to get that supplemental component of their education completed.
Gentlemen, this is Michael. I would like to offer that if you have follow-up questions, especially Alton, you mentioned there were some questions that you were unable to get to with Mr. Johnson from ETSU, to send those to me, and I will send them to the participants from today's conversation.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that.
Hey, Steve. This is Ricky.
Go ahead, Ricky.
Another way to Alton answered your question about why have ETAC and EAC as two different things. Another way to think about that is right now, 20 states outright accept ETAC the same as the EAC. The other 20 that have pathway require something extra. So in a minority of states only do they accept ETAC and EAC equally. So that would say that more of the country right now sees a difference between the two, and that's a reason why there's two different accreditation levels, I guess.
And I agree with both of you. It was just a little bit confusing to me as we listen. I think we probably are in good company to stay with those several states. I think you said 20, Ricky, that require something beyond the technology degree.
Hey,
Steve, this is Alton. I'm going back to some of the information that Casey sent us. It's a little old from NSPE. I think that may be what Ricky was going by. It says that 40 states and the District of Columbia accept ETAC, ABET ETAC accredited degrees. 20 of those accept just outright ETAC accredited degrees, and 20 plus the District of Columbia accept the ABET ETAC degrees after completing additional education and experience requirements. And then 9 don't, which includes Tennessee. Ricky, is that what you were looking at?
That Alton, that's exactly what I was looking at, and I understand that's got maybe a couple of years of age on it, so that maybe there's been a little difference there, but
I can verify that Ricky, I can verify that the number of states that accept the accredited degrees plus supplemental education and or experience has grown. It's no longer 20. I can't say definitively what it is, but I know that it has grown from beyond 20.
Okay. And do you think it's grown from?
I wouldn't say it's grown I mean, not heavily, but I mean, right now, all I know of is one state, that being the state of Missouri. And I believe we spoke about this, where their legislature passed a bill that was from their governor's office, and it required,
You're right,
I want to say it required a master's degree and 4 years of experience.
You're right. Missouri did shift into that other category.
I've not heard of any other, but that's why I'm not definitively saying that it's stopped at 21.
Michael and Stephen, this is Casey. If I can just have it, I had a thought. If I'm allowed to speak, is that okay?
It's okay with me. Casey, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm just thinking that if we think there have been some changes since that 2018 report, my guess is that those changes would have been at those that are at those that in the same category as us. And making phone calls just to those states might be an easier way to manage that information. Just rather than looking at the entire country as overwhelming, look at those states that are in the same boat as we are and see if we can't get an update from them if there have been any changes.
That's a good idea, Casey. I'll take that upon myself to do that.
It just seems more doable.
Well, it's a much shorter list. It's a much shorter list of phone calls. That's for sure.
But it's way more likely that they have made changes than those who have already discussed it.
Yeah, Casey, I agree with what you said, and that's a good idea. But I'm equally curious of the 20 that just accept it outright. Why? What information did they have to make them believe that it was equivalent. An ETAC degree was equivalent, substantially equivalent to an EAC accredited program.
Steve, if you
I'm
don't
not
mind me making
advocating that we call all of them, but I think it would be interesting to call maybe 3 or 4 of their licensing board members, or their and Michael, in your case, obviously the executive director, and find out why.
Alton, if you look to the back of that report, it gives you information state by state. And in the summary where it says with nothing else, with just flat out takes it, I'm not sure that the state by state, when you start looking through them, I'm not sure that's entirely accurate. I think for a summary judgment, it's accurate that they may not require, specifically a master's degree, for example. But if you take that report and you look at it against, I believe I sent Michael and copied you all just so that you had the information. But if you look at that report and the report with the requirements for getting a PE license, look at the differences maybe in some of the other pieces. I think that if you move beyond the summary, it might provide additional information, because I didn't get the impression that was 100% an accurate portrayal.
Yeah, Casey, I kind of put together my own spreadsheet about that, and the ones that said no constraints or additional requirements, I think there were 9 of those. And again, exactly to my point, if that was dictated by their legislature, that's a little bit different than them just deciding to accept it as a substantial equivalent. So, Michael, if you want, I can forward you this spreadsheet, and you can look at the ones that said that I have written down as the additional requirements for licensure with ETAC applicants, the ones that said no constraints or additional requirements. I'd be really curious about calling them to find out why.
I'd be happy to take a look at it, but make sure you lock it, because I have a tendency to screw up spreadsheets.
Hey, I'll send you a PDF.
And it might also be interesting to note of our adjoining states that are accepting the technology degree, what's their stance on that as far as additional requirements, if any?
Steve, I was looking at that as far as adjoining states, and kind of down the lines of what Alton was talking about. Virginia kind of jumps out at me as one that just accepts it outright, just to kind of get what's the history of that? Was that always that way? Do you see those two as equal, or do you reason that the individual code of ethics keeps everybody safe? I mean, so Virginia's one there, and then out
So
of
is North Carolina, Ricky.
is see, I see North Carolina in the group that requires additional education and experience.
I think that's been. I thought that had been negated. I'll look back and see, but
Okay.
The piece of information that I had said basically no constraints or additional requirements.
Okay, so that could be another one. So Virginia, North Carolina, and then in the category of the states that require more are Mississippi and Arkansas, and they're border states. That would be in Georgia as well. That it would be in Alabama too. So any of those border states, it kind of narrows how many we talk to kind of get their view on the history behind that, and might be a little more pertinent to us. We probably face more comedy applicants from border states, I guess.
Well, the other one I find very interesting is South Carolina, which used to allow it, but stopped allowing it July 1st of 2020.
Yeah, that would be interesting to get the story behind South Carolina. I noticed that too, Alvin.
All right, Michael, I'm gonna PDF this and email it to you.
Thank you, sir.
Michael, would it be okay when you get that to share that with the rest of us?
Yeah, let me first take an evaluation. I'll also, just to make sure we're not, we won't be in breach of anything, I'll run the document itself by legal and make sure that that's good to do.
Okay, and I guess from that point, what are our next steps?
Hey, Steve, this is Robert, and this is not next step, so I don't mean to go backwards. But if you remember, NCAAS rejected a motion or was against a motion to have the ETAC ABET be the same as the EAC ABET. They did not see the NCAAS, which, obviously represents all the licensing boards, did not see those as equivalent. And I think this email from David Cox that I've got that Roxana sent, and I would think you all have too. I mean, I can send it if you need to. It says 30 plus boards accept ETAC degrees. All but 2 or 3 require additional experience beyond the 4 years. I'm concerned that we do not put some sort, if we're going to go forward with this, that we don't put some sort of additional thing. Otherwise, why do we go through it? I mean, what's the good of calculus? What's the good of physics? Calculus-based physics. What's the good of it? I mean, if I can wait a couple extra years and everything's just the same, then man, we're paying a lot of college professors pretty big money to teach these courses that are unnecessary. Maybe they are unnecessary. I don't think so, but this just it doesn't pass the smell test for me. There's something different here. And I appreciate what the guy from ETSU said, but their engineering graduates they've got a 2+2 program with Tennessee Tech. So I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm not sure how to equate that. But it just seems like we got this. Let's make everything the same that some of these states have done. And I agree with everything everybody said. We need to figure out why. But this just doesn't look right to me. I mean, hell, let's just go. Like I said, we can save the universities a lot of money just by doing engineering technology degrees and not even worried about engineering degrees. They don't have to pay some of these guys and girls a lot of money if that's going to be the standard. There's a reason that people in our past have put this as something you need to know and need to do. And maybe our profession's gotten dumbed down to where it's not as important. I don't know, but it bothers me.
I think I mentioned in the past that my experience was that, of course, my experience is pretty old now since I'm getting pretty old, but students who got technology degrees were under a false impression that they could move right in toward licensure. So it was a problem either with advisors in high school or advisors in the university they went to. But, you know, I agree with you, Robert. I can't get right with making them both equivalent. Now, I don't know if Alton and Ricky agree with that, but maybe we ought to come to that conclusion before we move on.
Steve, this is Alton. I can tell you definitively, I don't consider them equivalent. And I've not only have I listened pretty closely to the deans today, but I've also looked at Dr. Smith's evaluation of the differences between the two. I do not consider an ETAC curriculum equivalent to an EAC curriculum. And again, based on what the deans said and sort of what Dr. Smith's considerations were, I think it would require additional classwork in order for there to be any consideration. I also like the notion, and apparently so do some other states, that we require a master's program from an ABET EAC accredited master's program, or university, I'm sorry.
Hey, Steve, this is Ricky. I agree with all of you that I don't think that ETAC is equivalent to EAC. That wasn't. I also am not comfortable with us establishing some position where they're just accepted equally. So I think it sounds like we can kind of move on from there. I think what we have been considering is there some pathway for those who are a good engineering candidate, and I don't doubt that there are people with engineering technology degrees that have as much intellect as PEs, and with the right experience and maybe some extra coursework like we're talking about, we could do engineering as well as somebody who graduated with an EAC degree. I'm not doubting there are those people out there. What our charge is in protecting health, safety, welfare is can we come up with something that is where we kind of check the box type of qualifications that we think is a good guideline on who those people are who are capable. And so anyway, short answer, no, I don't think they're equivalent. I don't think we ought to make them equivalent. The only thing I thought we were doing really is looking at, is there a pathway?
And another point might be, you notice the gentleman from ETSU mentioned that they offer a technology degree in surveying. Well, it may not be that all technology degrees could have a pathway to licensure, because I wouldn't think that a technology degree in surveying would serve as a base degree for engineering.
I mean, Steve, I agree. This is Robert again. I agree. I think that, and Ricky, I just don't want us to get caught up in this because it seemed like maybe it was the guy from ETSU seemed to be saying that everything was the same. And I don't think this is about intelligence. I don't think it's about anything that like that. But I go back to kind of my original comment, and somebody else brought it up before me about protecting the health and safety. Part of the reason you go through the stuff you go through when you're in school is to give you an understanding of a greater depth of the world that helps you make, hopefully strengthens your ability to make wiser choices in your chosen field. I think that's the right way to put it, and again, going through some of the classes we have to go through, yeah, it strengthens your problem solving ability, but it also lets you know that there's some really, really smart people out there that can do a heck of a lot more than I can. And I kind of need to know where my lane is. And I'm worried that the engineering technology field kind of attracts people, not because of intelligence, but because math was hard on me, but go into those fields because math is not as demanding or physics is not as demanding. And I don't know that they get the um, same insight into how hard some of these things are. And again, not that what I do is hard. There's a bunch of engineers and people that do way harder stuff than I do, but it just, I think it helps you figure it out. So that's my comment.
Hey, Robert, this is Alton. I think I agree with what you said. I'm probably not smart enough to follow along all the way, but the other thing that I think is important that each of the professors noted is the difference between the vocations that the different graduates pursue. Engineering students are going into, well, probably each of the 5 practice divisions or fields. And generally, though, the engineering technology graduates are going more into manufacturing and industry. Also, their curriculums are structured where they do more lab work, where they get a lot more hands-on experience with, mechanics and equipment and their functionality and things like that. So it is different. I mean, engineers design and engineering technologists operate, I suppose would be, I think that's kind of what Dr. Pack was saying. But can they design? Do they have the aptitude to design? They're smart people. Their education is different, and their educational training is different. And I would, again, reiterate, I'd be concerned that some of the things that engineers have to go through is really more training your mind to understand problem solving and thinking theoretically to do that, and using those types of components, physics and calculus, I suppose, to some extent, to figure those problems out. And it's not just, hey, if we manufactured this gear using ceramic instead of steel, it would last longer. And it's different. The application is different, and therefore the education is different. And if they want to move into a field where they want to practice engineering and incorporate design into what they do, I think at a minimum they need to meet the same educational requirements. And I also feel like they need to be able to demonstrate that they've got some level of practical experience in design. So, again, my 2 cents worth.
Alton, that aligns very closely with where my thoughts were going. That just hearing Keith Johnson with East Tennessee, state, really I don't think he was saying the programs are equivalent, but he did say if they can pass the FE and the PE test, why not allow them to become PEs? And always thought that there was a much wisdom, as Robert said, somebody figured this out for us before we came along, that we're not just talking about passing a test. That because I feel like what you just said, Alton, the experience of doing engineering and in my case design work under a PE was maybe more important than the education and exam legs of the stool. And I think of the three, I mean, so the thoughts that had are based on what we heard today. The goal of a engineering technology degree is most of the time different as far as what kind of a job you're going to go into. You're going to go into more of an operator job. And when you talk about experience requirements, a person who graduates with an engineering degree, not always, but is more likely to go right into, as I did, work doing engineering tasks under a PE's supervision. A person with a technology degree, you probably more often coming out of school is not going to jump into doing engineering tasks under a PE. They're probably more likely going to do work at positions and jobs that are more typical for an engineering technology grad, and they might move into the type of engineering design or engineering type task eventually, but you wouldn't think it would be right out of the chute. And I've always felt like 4 years is pretty minimal, because I know that I had some formation there after 4 years, but I consider myself to have been had a whole long way to go after just 4 years. When you look back on it, there was more I didn't know than what I knew, and that's what we accept as an experience level. So again, I think it's not equivalent, and I think in looking at any rules or pathways, I think there's logic in saying that more experience really should be required of a technology grad, because they probably haven't had the same design or engineering experiences yet after 4 years. Likely, I'm not saying that's every case, but just on the whole.
So, Steve and Robert, I would. This is Alton. I'm sorry. I would appreciate your opinion. I think where it appears that Ricky and I come down is it not only requires additional education, but also additional experience.
Alton, this is Robert. Yeah, I think additional experience is certainly one of the things we need to be looking at, and I don't know what that number is, but yes, I agree.
Robert, do you also agree about additional education, or are you just thinking just experience?
You know, I'm not, as the education piece. Again, my big fear is that you don't develop the wisdom that you need, or the whatever that you need, because you've not gone through the process as much while you were in school. So I'm not sure how much more education is going to help you. But I would like to see people that have kind of gotten on a path that they're probably going to be very unlikely to get off of. And that would be their substitute for the other stuff. The education pieces that I believe help keep us away from things we don't know, if that makes any sense. Because I mean, I may be talking, you know, instead of 4 years, talking 10 years of experience or something.
Steve, this is Alvin again. I'd appreciate your thoughts on that too.
Well, I think, I guess I probably brought this up a long time before we were asked to look at it. I sort of felt bad for the technology graduates when we had the bill that was approved that let, you know, the master's candidates in with I guess an increased number of years of experience. I think I think the degrees aren't equivalent. I think the way, because of what other states have done, particularly those surrounding us, we probably do need to create a pathway. And I think it involves education and experiences. And I think that's where I've been for several years now, even before we were asked to look at this.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Casey, are you still on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. I would, again, you represent the engineers of the state and the engineering companies of the state. Do you have any feel at all about what the response would be to some proposal to allow an alternate path to licensure, allowing ETAC, a graduate from an ETAC program to be allowed to sit for the FE and the PE?
You know, Alton, I'll be honest, it's not something that I've sort of thrown out there because I think it's much like decoupling. I think when people only are looking at, you know, one sentence, you know, are you good or bad with this? I think you get what you get out of that. And I think that if you all can put some reasonable discussion behind any proposal that you have, I think it makes sense. Like I spend a lot of time on this stuff, both on the Hill and with members and engineers licensed and your licensees all day, every day. And I was fascinated reading through that report, which is why I sent it to you all the other day, because I do think, you know, I think a blanket, I think there are two extremes. One is the extreme of you have an an engineering technology degree, and here's your license. And the other extreme is where we are, where there's not a pathway. And I think that, you know, to me, I think those are both fairly unreasonable for different reasons. And I would. So I see Ray Tant's name on here. He's on a committee. We've got a little committee set up to talk about some of these issues, but we're waiting for you all to, and it's a committee of some of the technical societies and the professional and the trade associations that are the two that I am over or work for or represent. But if I, you know, to me, I think we're all waiting for you all to come up with what you think is reasonable, because you are the ones who really see what comes out. What are the effects on health, safety, and welfare, and the potential, you know, pitfalls and those safeguards that the deans talked about today, I think are important ones. And I think we can have those conversations more appropriately once there's something concrete to discuss. I think if I ask 100 people, I'm going to have 100 different answers. And lots of people will be yes or no. And that's not constructive. So.
Steve, this is Alton again. And Casey, thank you for that, for your comments, and I appreciate that. And one other thing I will say that I'm concerned about is if we open the discussion for alternative paths to licensure, you know, I think we need to be judicious about that, and we need to be cautious, because the other thing that we don't want to do is have plumbers and electricians and HVAC contractors coming and saying, hey, listen, you know, we've got training programs that teach us how to work on these things. Therefore, we should have a professional license, and we should be able to go into buildings and do designs for architects because we know the codes. So we need to be careful about how we approach this.
Well, I think I agree with what Robert said. Those who came before us had some reasons for why our requirements are as they are. And, you know, if it was just, you know, totally up to me without any other outside influence, I'm comfortable with where our requirements are today. But I think there are others who influence the political process that influences our laws that we have to be concerned about. So I think that does push us into a situation where we need to consider a pathway for the technology graduates. And I do think it has to involve education and experience. I guess the question now is, where do we go from here, and what does the committee see as our next step? We've been at this now a little over 2 hours, so maybe we ought to consider what we should do at our goal for the next meeting.
Steve, this is Alton again, and I promise I will try not to comment more after this, because I don't want to monopolize the conversation. But I think at a minimum at the next meeting, we probably need to, it seems like we've made a decision, or we haven't made a decision about whether or not we say, yeah, we can recognize an alternative ETAC, a graduate of an ETAC program, accredited ETAC program, as an alternative path to licensure with these additional items. I mean, I think all of us understand the other issues, the peripheral issues that are in play here that could affect our licensing authority if we fail to come up with some plan. You know, or if we don't offer, if we decide, nope, we still think it's in our best interest in the protection of the public health, safety, and welfare not to pursue this and to keep it exactly the way that it is, we better have a really good rationale for why. Either way. But if we're going to do this and we're going to consider it, and I think we, at some level, we almost have to, and I think at our next meeting, we need to be prepared to offer some sort of methodology to create this alternate pathway to licensure for somebody who has an ETAC degree. And I'd be glad to try to, it would be very, very brief, but I'd be glad to try to write up something or all of us could individually, and consider those things and discuss them in a lot more detail at the next engineering committee meeting. Thank you.
Well, do you think it would be appropriate for all of us to come to the next meeting with a suggestion like that, with maybe what that additional education looks like and what that years of experience would look like?
I think so. Yeah, this is Michael. I don't know if that was direct towards me or in general, but I believe that's very appropriate. And I was going to say that you all, it seems like you all have already agreed that education and experience are a factor. So great. Let's move to the next step. The next step should be determining what those factors are. And I think you all taking some time to jot down what your thoughts are would be the perfect first step to opening that conversation. And just for your reference, the next meeting of the Engineer Committee is 2 weeks from today at 1 p.m.
Robert, what do you think about that? You think that's a good strategy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like I said, I kind of agree with Michael. I think we have decided that there's something additive, from an experience standpoint. I'm not sure from an education, but I mean, I can be convinced, but I think we need to kind of figure out what that additive part looks like and kind of look at that, because it's, just need to look at that, I suppose.
Okay, is there anything else that the committee wants to do today, or do you think we've achieved what we set out to do for this meeting?
Steve, this is Alton. Again, I think we still have the decoupling issue to talk about, but I think we're all resolved that decoupling is. I'm not sure everybody's wholly in favor of it, but I think we recognize that we could allow that. That may be something else that we want to just discuss in some level of detail. Obviously, not to the extent that we would this other alternative path to licensure. And we haven't discussed, well, I guess Casey is really good at elaborating on the 4 things that we were considering, but the master's program that was one of the other that we talked about. If you graduated from
International degree was the 4th.
Yeah, and of course we've got the Washington Accord that helps with that, I think. So I think we need to get all of these identified and an approach and methodology and agreement in place as we move forward. It'd be nice to have all 4 of them done.
Yeah, I agree that all of them are kind of part of the same or a similar conversation. It doesn't seem like we ought to just deal with one and not the other. But the technology degree thing is a little bit, I mean, kind of has come on quicker here more recently as far as how it hits me. We haven't been talking about technology degree for 4 years like we have decoupling, and all of a sudden it's the big issue. And so that is the takeaway that I had today, is that we're all thinking we're marching towards some kind of a pathway. And that does sound pretty good to come to the next meeting with what we feel is comfortable in terms of experience and education additive requirements. That seems like a good way to just kind of lay it out on the table and just see how close everybody's vision is there. The other thing that strikes me is how, for me, that the master's degree is more similar to this technology degree discussion than I thought. You know, that it's not the exact same issue, but it's very similar.
And Michael, this is Robert. For the master's discussion, I'm not trying to. Can you reach out to? I don't have the contact for the Louisiana board. I don't know if it's still Donna Centel or not. She had forwarded to me, and it's 2 or 3 years ago, and I was semi trying to find it while we were talking, but for the master's degree, kind of they've got a chart that I think will be helpful to us about what they see if you get your bachelor's in something and your master's in something else. They consider that equivalent, and I'm going to mess up, but for instance, if your undergrad is in mathematics and you go get a master's in environmental engineering, then that's good. But I think they may have conquered some of this master's degree stuff for us, and I just can't find. It's a table they've got. I mean, we may want to modify it, obviously, but I think it's a really, really good jumping off point.
Sure, I'll reach out to them, and I was also planning to reach out to Mississippi because I was on a call with them. We were on an NCARB call the other day, and John, who's down there in Mississippi, mentioned that their governor has proposed a universal acceptance bill, which basically is universal licensing. And I'd be interested to see if they have any requirements in there, or we're able to put some requirements in there surrounding these topics of discussion as well.
And I don't know if I'm allowed to speak, but I'm going to. It's Casey Anderson again. And I would love to see that information as well, because our governor has proposed the same thing this year. And I just want to make sure that we are aware of, where that's happening and not happening given this discussion.
Got it.
And Casey and Michael, since you brought that topic up, it's just, Casey, that was really good information that you sent on the education requirements throughout the country. That I don't know that people are aware that there are other states out there that don't require a college degree to become a PE, much less arguing about whether it's technology or engineering. So that's the people who are pushing for universal. I just wonder if they understand that, and that certainly doesn't seem like the direction of protecting health, safety, and welfare.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, how would you like to proceed?
Well, I was going to ask, is there more discussion that we need to entertain on decoupling?
Hey, Steve, this is Alton. I mean, there are so many states that now have decoupling. I'm sure there's probably some legislation that's written that we lack. Michael, could you possibly reach out to a couple of surrounding states and see if they can give us a copy of the actual language in their legislation so that we can review that and maybe come up with our own version?
just to be clear, we're talking about decoupling here, correct?
That's correct, yes.
I can make some calls.
Steve, one thing I think we may need to decide on decoupling is I know Robert, the last maybe the last conversation we had about decoupling or in the last meeting, the thought is that the legislation has to come from really outside of the board, that the legislation needs to be brought forward by the public, and I'm not sure that that's how it has happened in other states, but I'm not sure that's not how. But from what I've read, I think there have been some states where it did come from the board, and I guess the viewpoint is the board is the entity that oversees the laws and rules. Well, I don't even know if that's the correct terminology there. But anyway, I think there could be a question there about how, if we're in agreement about decoupling proceeding, do we need to wait for another entity to develop that, or do we either want to or need to develop that proposed language?
Ricky, this is Alton. When you're talking about another entity, are you talking about somebody in state or somebody out of what? How did you mean that?
In state and coming from the industry, I guess, not from the A board. And I'm not trying to speak for you, Robert, but I'm thinking that's what I remember about what a reason in the past why we have tried to really introduce this topic through ACEC and TSPE is that ultimately we thought if there was a change in the rules and laws, that it would come from industry and not be something that the board is proposing. Is that, am I?
Yeah, Ricky, this is Robert. Yeah, I mean, so the discussion has gone like this. We know there are people out there in our industry, right, wrong, or indifferent, that would be opposed to decoupling. We thought that it best that the societies kind of vet whatever that law, that rule looks like for it. There's two reasons. That's the first one, is that they would vet this out so that the disagreement that we may or may not have kind of gets fleshed out and everybody agrees to it before it goes to a legislative process, and we end up fighting among ourselves and creating another situation. The other thing was, frankly, we are very limited in how much legislation we can take as a board through the process. I mean, we've been, obviously you go in on the governor's package and so we're fairly limited in what we can do there. And, maybe even a other reason is when it comes to something like this, that's got industry-wide applications. Maybe not. I don't know. There may be a kind of us putting our finger on the scale. I'm not sure if that's right or not. But there may have been a perception that the board's for it, so we all need to be for it. But anyway, those are discussions from the past, and especially the first two reasons, we thought it was wiser for the societies to lead the charge. And I think Casey has definitely said multiple times she's willing to do that, and has got people together, in the background, kind of working on that.
But Robert, I will also say, I believe that the last time, the way we left it last was those 4 areas. Y'all were going to come back with suggestions. that for that group to vet, like, and whether or not that group comes up with that legislation or not, but that the board was going to give us a starting place of what you all felt was appropriate.
Yeah, Casey, this is Alton. That was my understanding too. Well, just like the other alternate path to licensures, that we would come up with something that we felt like didn't affect or negatively impact the public's health, safety, and welfare, and offer that to maybe ACEC, ASCE, the other professional societies for committee review and comment or thoughts.
Okay, well, that helps me understand kind of what the process. Then that if we're coming up with our recommendations after we've on these 4 issues for consideration, then the societies weigh in at that point. Is that Casey and Robert? Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
That was my understanding of the direction that y'all gave me.
You're asking me to I mean, I didn't think that, but I mean, again, my memory, I don't know. We've gone around this thing so many times that I may be misremembering, as they say, but I thought we had for a long time, again, that may have changed, kind of taken a neutral stance on this until that was vetted. But again, I know we were working on different areas, the master's degree, engineering technology degree, like we are right now, and definition, and maybe there was somebody assigned to decoupling, but I don't remember who that was.
Didn't legal advise us last meeting that the situation with the education requirement and what we decide to do or not do with technology could be handled with a rule change. But I'm not sure that the other areas could be handled with a rule change. I was thinking they were law changes. Is that correct, Michael or Maria?
Sorry, I was on mute. I would defer to Maria on that. My understanding is they were law changes, but again, Maria would be the expert there.
We're talking about the technology degree, correct? Not decoupling.
Maria,
we were talking about
decoupling would require a law change also, because we now require 4 years of progressive experience post graduation from an ABET accredited university before you can sit for the PE.
Okay, and then as to the technology degree, it was my understanding that if that is a rule change, not a statute change. I mean, it could be done, obviously, if the statute was changed by someone other than this board, or like if it wasn't submitted in the governor's package, I mean, obviously the statute would override the rule, but at this point we can change it via rule.
And Maria, that was from an interpretation of what engineering degree, in code it says engineering degree, correct?
I believe so. And then the rule is more specific, but I can double check.
Does not say ABET accredited in statute though?
I don't think so, Casey. I'll double check though.
I just can't remember.
I'll look. I'm looking right now. You guys can continue, and I'll let you know when I find the answer.
Okay, as far as next meeting, we want to come back with our thoughts on what, as far as a technology degree, what our suggestion would be for additional education and/or experience, and what do we think we just have continue to have on the agenda? Decoupling, master's degree, and what's the fourth, international degree?
Yeah, Steve, this is Alton. That's correct. Those are the four.
Unless there's further discussion.
Maria, I just want to follow up. The ABET is not mentioned in the statute, only in the rule. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Maria.
Well, that's what I recalled, and I felt like, Michael, that there was some encouragement from the department for the board or the committee to make a evaluation of the technology degree requirement, additional requirements, and for us to move toward a rule change was my impression.
I believe there were questions about that, and I think we had decided that it was a statutory change. But again, I defer to Maria and whatever she says.
I think the thought behind it was that if we do a rule change, which we have the power to do, and it would have the ability to change requirements with that language, then the board would be making that decision. And as professionals and experts in your field, that would be a good forum to do the rule change. Like I said, now the statute could be changed by outside, factors, or even if it didn't come from the governor's office. So that was my understanding of it, that we could do the rule change before, maybe the board wasn't considered in that decision and a statute change occurred, like we've seen in other states. That it's just kind of the board's taken out of it at that point.
Okay, what's the desire of the committee as far as what you want to do today versus the next meeting?
Steve, this is Alton. My preference would be that we keep all four on our agenda for next month. I think I want to ask that Michael check with our sister organizations somewhere close to us, Alabama, Kentucky, and others that allow decoupling, to get whatever rule change they put into effect so that we can review that and come up with our own. Then we have a lot to discuss. I think each of us was going to consider what we would require as a minimum alternative path to licensure for somebody with an ETAC degree. Then the issue about, again, I think we keep on there, we haven't really discussed a lot the master's, other than the fact that we give 1 year's credit for somebody with a master's. And beyond that, maybe we want to keep that on the agenda and discuss it in more detail at the next meeting. And then finally, for me, the international degree, I like the notion that the tenets that are given in the Washington Accord, and the fact that the ABET program and NCAAS reviews those for, I guess, to determine whether or not they're substantially equivalent to the requirements of those universities in the United States. They seem to be a a gatekeeper for that process, and the fact that we've got that already in place, and that universities, international universities, are petitioning NCAAS and ABET for those accreditations and equivalency evaluations. I think we can talk more about that also, and what our comfort level is, and what we agree to allow and consider and not. But I still think we keep all of those things on the agenda for discussion at the next meeting.
Okay, is there any
Also,
more?
this is Maria. I just want to add one thing. I will send you all the language of the statute as well as the language of the rule, just so you can see it. The language of the statute is pretty broad, and then the rule is where we get into the more specifics. And the rule language specifically states that we do not accept engineering technology degrees. So that's where the board could come in and change that, or we could add, different qualifications, experience, education, that kind of thing. So I will send you all that just so you can see it.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Is there any other thing that we wanted to discuss today?
Steve, this is Alton. I don't have anything else.
Okay, I would suggest that we adjourn and have those 4 items on our next meeting agenda, along with the requests that committee members have made of Michael for additional information. See if that can be made available for the next meeting.
Thank you, Steve. This is Alton. With those acknowledgments, I make a motion that we adjourn.
I second.
Very well. We stand adjourned for a couple of weeks, I guess.
2 weeks from today. Thank you all.
Thanks. Everybody be safe.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks.